Well, again, thanks for going around with the round robin. I know it's it's already 11:15, and we want to make sure that most of the time here is spent with Tom, actually showing you the ins and outs of the solution. Had a chance to speak with Mark and Tom prior, and have an understanding of where things are at today, but then also what the goals are and where like the improvements want to be made. Real high level first, just what OpenGov does and who we partner with. I mean, we cover everything from budgeting and planning to core financials, procurement. Tax and revenue is a recent partnership of ours that's now part of our ERP cloud solution. But we're here to talk about the permitting and licensing, and can certainly speak either afterwards or as it comes up to some of the great things we do in asset management. When we think about public works permitting, any public works permits that are issued through OpenGov permitting and licensing, those are going to automatically populate as your work order tasks within the asset management solution. So terms like when we think about like internal department collaboration and communication between teams, that's a really strong area as well. And then all bucketed underneath it is the reporting and transparency, which you guys already have a pretty good understanding of. So I put this slide together from the conversation that I had a chance to have with the town currently, to get a quick overview of where things are today and then what the goals are. But I think high level, it's just we're going to streamline the decision making and the department collaboration. At the moment, it sounds, staff still are printing out forms, putting them on desks, walking across the hall, getting signatures, and then processing the approvals that way, which creates, just extra manual steps within the process, can lead to, more time before a permit gets turned around. So what we'll be doing within OpenGov is we're going to take whatever that workflow looks like today, who approves which step, that's going to be put all in one online solution with OpenGov, where your workflows are just going to be digitized and you can collaborate internally. So it's automatically pings the next person who's up, if you will. So you avoid the bottleneck process that's probably happening today. But I think ultimately we're just providing greater transparency and accessibility to the public by taking a process that can be a bit of a headache for applicants, whether that's contractors who do this regularly or whether it's just citizens, by streamlining it, by being able to provide consistent updates where their permit stands in a certain step. You'll get hopefully a lot less phone calls asking you where something is, but you're just gonna meet that need quicker, and you're gonna strengthen that trust that you have with the public by giving them this resource. I'll pause here for a second. Mark, I know we spoke to this a little bit, but anything that the team's seeing that maybe should absolutely be noted alongside this? Anything to add on?
Can I add one?
Do you have a customer portal?
Yes. Yeah, so that's where we're gonna start the conversation today. That's really the big thing for us.
No one mentioned it, but mapping.
Yep.
So to hear that word today.
Absolutely.
Integrating us all with mapping, whether it's a spatial view of what's out there,
Mhm.
where it's at, or
Yeah,
how
definitely.
you integrate with that. I heard the gentleman at the desk, so
Yeah.
I assume we're gonna hear more about it today.
Tom's definitely going to speak to
Yes.
the integration we'll have, the tie into your GIS. That's where the automation's going to have its most impact. Hey, Jen?
Can we talk a little bit about too, at some point, like we use Munis,
Yep. Mhm.
and making sure that it is our book of record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Utilizing these tools is great, but at the same time, we can't create two silos that aren't talking together.
Yeah, understood. We can grab some time at the end where I can
Okay.
take you through it. Munis is one of the most common integrations
Yep.
that we do, and we have our own native payment processor, so we have a way to set that up so we can tie in, which is critical. I know. I think this slide is us kind of bragging a little bit, but we love the work we do in the state. Right now we support over about 120 communities, and this slide is not everyone pictured. It's leaving out some of the newer ones that need to be updated, but I think it just speaks to, from an applicant standpoint, adoption's one of the greatest concerns when bringing on software is, will our applicants use this? Will contractors know? Is it going to make the process almost more challenging than it already is? And I think you can rest assured, just knowing that, given the user base that we have, especially within the Cape, one login, whether that's in Chatham or whether that's in Provincetown, is the same login that contractor, if they're going to do business with Orleans, would use. So one, your info is already populated. No one likes to re-enter data, but at the same time, there's a familiarity with it. So you're certainly working with, you know, a happy customer base that's gonna be very aware of what you're bringing on, which is gonna drive adoption. And then lastly, you know, we can't do what we do without the expertise we have on our staff. We have over 500 years of combined government experience, and whether that's Dean's in the bottom right, Mark will definitely be bringing Dean into the conversations at some point. He leads all of our, you know, scoping conversations to ensure successful projects, but he was the former codes administrator at Cranberry Township in Pennsylvania, and then came on to OpenGov after a really successful experience. And there's other folks on this slide, just to know that we take input from the people who've worked in the similar roles as you all in the room, and that's why we've built solutions that have had the success they have. And then lastly, to think about implementation and just understanding like what makes OpenGov different. We do all of our implementation in-house. You have a dedicated project manager who takes you through the process. We do weekly meetings. There's expectations from our side and then from the town side of what we're going to be each held accountable for to ensure implementation is successful, because ultimately it's so critical that implementation runs smoothly and that it's done from a really project management mindset. And we have the team members who are from OpenGov. We don't, you know, outsource this at all, that you work with throughout the process. And then this is kind of my, you know, alley-oop to Tom. This is our public portal. We'll be covering the public portal today. We'll be going over how we're going to streamline the review process, how you can collaborate with each other, but then also with applicants. You can message out to applicants. Hey, I submitted the wrong attachment. No worries. We can, you know, message you back. We can reopen that portion of your application, receive it that way. And then ultimately, we're going to give you full control over the solution. So it's configurable, meaning you need to make changes, you can make them in live time. Doesn't need to be an email to IT support or request for changes that we make for you. You're coached and trained throughout implementation to do that yourself. So that's the big, you know, some of the key areas we'll touch on today. If there's any questions, happy to answer anything that's really pressing at the moment, but want to give Tom the time to take us through the demonstration format, if that sounds acceptable to everyone in the room. Yeah? Okay, great. Tom.
Excellent.
Hand off the HDMI. Great. Mia, I was here the whole time I was speaking. That's
About right.
that's close enough,
Yeah.
just to give you an idea. We're mic'd up. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Guess I'm not going to really have a flat surface for the coffee here, but that should be okay. And this, oh, okay. See that there. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for having us today. So my name's Tom Crosby, and I'm a senior solutions engineer at OpenGov. I've been with the company for coming up on 8 years, and this meeting's a bit of a homecoming for me in many ways. So my family's from the Cape. My father was born in Barnstable, grew up on Sunset Lane. As a kid, for probably 15 summers in a row, went and camped at Nickerson State Park. Loved every minute of it. So really excited to be back here. Family from all over the Cape. Anybody from fire in the meeting today? No? So my grandfather was fire chief of Barnstable for many years. My uncle after him. So yeah, feels like home, and glad to be here. So today, live in Newton. But yeah, been spending the better part of a decade selling this software, not just in Massachusetts, but across the country. So if Jack didn't mention this, this software was actually born here in Massachusetts, and that's one of the reasons that when we look at the map, there is such broad coverage in the state today. And wanted to start with the town of Provincetown as a great example. I use them as an example whether or not we're meeting with folks in the Cape. They're a really great example of kind of how broad the software actually is. So what we're looking at here, somebody asked about the public portal. What we're seeing on screen is Provincetown's public portal. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anybody can come online. They can apply for any of the applications that the town has put online. And reason that I use Provincetown as an example, again, outside of the state in many cases, is that they are one example of a community that's really kind of thought outside the box about what's possible using this software. So, little history lesson. About 12 years ago, when we started building this software in the cloud, at that time, the permitting vendors and licensing vendors in the marketplace were primarily regionally focused. And computer programming back in those days, if anybody's familiar with it, in order to create software like this 10, 15 years ago, you really kind of needed to hard code everything into the software, which is why you still see a lot of homegrown solutions today. In many governments, I would estimate probably 50% of governments still have some form of homegrown software. And that's why you would see a lot of homegrown solutions, is because it would start with a small mom and pop shop who would ultimately be working with governments in their vicinity to build regional specific software. And the problem with that is that once you get outside of a certain radius, it becomes impossible to code for every different iteration of how government is run. So the major innovation that OpenGov brings with this software, and ultimately there are several different providers on the market today that offer cloud-based configurable software. The major innovation here was that we were the first in the cloud to be completely open-ended and configurable. And what that gives us today is, if we scroll down here on Provincetown's website, when we started, we really kind of considered this building permit software and planning and zoning. But ultimately, we discovered that with the simple layout of the software, with our simple configuration approach, we can really facilitate just about any application that government handles today. So across the top here, you'll see some typical use cases: building, licensing. Provincetown's doing rental certificates. That's becoming more and more of a use case that we're seeing across the state and across the country. But as I scroll down, you'll start to see the use cases get more and more specific. So we mentioned health department. They have 25 different application types in their health department today. Conservation, I heard somebody mention wetlands. Select boards, they're doing proclamations, letters of support. Planning department, another really strong use case for us. But then they have a historic application, zoning. We see the water department here, community development, and on they go. So Provincetown right now is under an unlimited user or unlimited service area licensing model, which means they can bring on any department or any service, anything that they can dream up, they can build into the software. So OpenGov led the initial deployment of Provincetown's software, meaning that we took some of their critical record types that they needed to get off the ground. Typically that looks like your building, residential, commercial, anything in planning, anything in zoning. We really want to tackle the application types and the processes up front that are most difficult. They're the most complex and time consuming for you and your staff. We want to build those and teach you how we build them as we go, so that over time, once you are fully handed over the keys to the software, you'll be able to come in and build your boat storage record type. Because ultimately, there's nothing that I can do that you'll see today in the software that you all won't be able to do, so long as you have the appropriate level of access and the required training. The software is really easy to use. I've estimated that it takes about 2 weeks, about an hour a day, to fully grasp everything that you can do in this software. It really is a logic-based system. If this, then that. So ultimately, what OpenGov permitting, licensing, and code enforcement is a open-ended configuration software that allows you to build any type of form using the answers from applicants, whether they're drop-downs, check boxes, number fields. Those can trigger conditions of many different kinds, and conditions can ultimately affect what type of attachments are going to be required, what fees the applicant will be paying, what inspections might trigger off of that process as a result. Ultimately, what does that workflow look like from start to finish? So that's really the basis of the initial deployment is OpenGov needs to work directly with you all to understand what are your processes. And then we go in and we start building those out together. Any questions so far on anything?
Has anyone asked you for a online portal for lead service line inventory?
For land service line,
Lead and copper rule, so all water departments are required as of October
Mhm.
to have an online posting that people can look up their address and see what their water service line is.
Interesting. I don't know off the top of my head, but we can come in here and take a look. So the other thing I wanted to mention there when I was showing everything that Provincetown is doing today, one of the interesting things that we can do and a great benefit for new communities coming on in Massachusetts, anything that Provincetown is doing today, anything that any community on the Cape is doing today or anywhere in the state, we can use any record types or application types that those communities have already built. We can create a carbon copy in your instance of the software, and then we just make simple configuration changes. Because ultimately, governments don't compete in a traditional sense. So that gives rise to a collaborative approach where governments can actually borrow each other's record types, and that cuts down on the overall time to deployment. So what I'm doing here, we're now in our reporting and transparency portal, and this should look familiar to some of you, I believe. But what I'm doing here is I'm looking every 6 to 8 months, we take a copy of all of the applications that are submitted across the country, and we actually bring it into our reporting software so that we can understand what's happening across the country. So if I come in here, I got a couple filters on here. This allows me to run a query against everything that's being done in the country today. So I can come over here to record type, and I can't guarantee that there's gonna be something for lead, but potentially there will be.
Maybe service line, water service line inventory.
So I'm just gonna start with service line, and we'll go ahead and apply. And looks like in Goddard, Kansas, and Burlington, Vermont, there's something that we're seeing there. So water service line review is something that's being done in Burlington, Vermont today. And in Goddard, Kansas, there's a service line permit. So ultimately, the answer to your question is as long as it's an application process that has some sort of formal review, some sort of workflow with any sort of outcome, any sort of documentation that needs to be produced, that is a record type that we could set up, and that could ultimately become searchable either on a database like we see on the screen here, or if we go back to Provincetown, up here in the top right, community members are able to search on an address or on a record number to see any data that's been published to that record. So you will see some general information there, water, sewer information. You'll be able to see zoning designation, things like that. But if any documents have been issued as a result of an application process, those will be visible here as well. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like creating record types is relatively straightforward based on the fact that you have access to existing ones all over the country. My question, my concern is about data import from existing records. How limited are we to expect to be with regard to importing records and especially with attachments?
So where are you going to be importing records from?
Variety of places.
Variety of places.
I mean, we use, in the building department, we use people forms, people
Okay.
right now, and those permit applications online have attachments, I'm wondering if we're gonna be able to import those.
So we have done many a migration from People GIS. Attachments, yes, we can handle. The only requirement, and the simplest way to put it, is that we require the information in a flat file. So CSV, comma delimited, like Excel format. That's the easiest way for us to get record data into the software. What we do there is we'll create a historical record type for any records that need migrating, and then we'll do the mapping. Once the mapping is done, all the data will pull in very quickly. The mapping's the hard part. And then attachments, yes, we have a process for that as well.
All right, sorry, so does that mean that those files will forever be historical imports or migrations as opposed to, you won't be able to manipulate those and use those as actively as you would a new permit file?
Depending on what you mean by actively manipulating,
So I mean, transferring open permits,
yeah.
so will those always have a historical moniker?
Okay, so now there's really kind of two different things that we're talking about. Historical records that are completely closed, those will be migrated over in a format that I can probably find an example for at some point today. But when a new record's created in OpenGov, it's going to have an OpenGov record number, and the numbering pattern is similar, is probably exactly what you use today. It's open-ended, it's configurable. So that will be issued out in a bold black in the top left hand. That indicates that it's a new record, has a live workflow. Obviously, a completed record would have a completed workflow. Migrated records will have a parenthetical appendage of the historical record number, whatever that may be. But then we have a process for migrating over anything that's in flight leading up to your go live. And we can talk through that as well.
Thanks.
Definitely, and that's something we can actually set some time up for you to actually meet with our professional services team. When it comes to data migration, it's always a topic of conversation, but I think we can certainly like get you some more info. But maybe we can kind of show more like right now. Maybe we can do like permit intake, approval process internally, so you can kind of see like what the day-to-day would look like.
Before I hop into an actual demonstration, was there anything that hopped out at anybody on Provincetown's site that we wanted to just double click on really quickly? Okay, if the answer is no. I find their site really interesting.
Didn't click on water for me.
Water. There we go. Okay, so in every department or service area tile, each one of those operates kind of like its own individual homepage for that department. Everything you see here is configurable. It can change at any point in time. Each department head or administrator is the owner of this content. So you don't need to go to IT to get changes made here. If you know how to make a Microsoft Word document look fancy, you'll be able to do a lot of different things here. You can embed videos, tables, hyperlinks. You can have file downloads here. So this is your space to contextualize the process. But then anything that is built out from a record type or application perspective, those will be available here. You can have help text under each of the applications, and any of this can change at any point in time. That's really the most important thing to take away from today. This is your opportunity to adapt to change of any kind, whatever that change is. The state might release new guidance. You can quickly and easily adhere to that. One example I like to use there, during COVID, the city of St. Petersburg used this exact piece of software to issue out grant funds to locals and small businesses. They had a small fund of like $10 million that they wanted to provide for relief. It wasn't federal, it was just there. It was excess money they had in the budget. So they set up an grant application portal through this exact piece of software. And the mayor kind of staked his reputation on having it go live on a Monday. They were working on it until like 8 or 9 p.m. on a Sunday. They set it live and they were able to go live. They successfully issued out all $15 million over the course of several months. But that just gives you kind of a sense of how easy it is to make changes. Literally everything you're going to see today is malleable. It's configurable.
Can you make a single global change at once?
Mhm.
Can you make that a top line change, or do you have to go to every single department? and
Yeah.
type in, or-
You could turn off one record type if you wanted to. There's a lot of little switches in here, and those are kind of your global changes. Every new feature that we release is released under what we would call a feature flag. So that allows you to determine, is this on or is this off? So yeah, you could turn off an entire department or one record type if you needed to. But was there anything in water that you wanted to look at before we hop in, or just kind of interested in the record types?
I know, there's nothing there that jumps out at me.
Okay.
We'll be around at the end too.
Do you do any SCADA integrations?
In the enterprise asset management solution, we do, yes. All right. So I put together a demonstration environment for the town today. A couple of things to point out here. On this environment, you see these projects. Projects are your opportunity to ask an applicant a series of yes or no questions prior to ever filling out an application. So my uncle is actually a contractor based out of Falmouth, and he has used this software for many years. We talked about it. One of the things that he's kind of doesn't love about some communities is they don't use smart projects. But this actually is, again, your opportunity to build a homepage with any helpful information around a larger, more complex project. What we're going to do today is answer some questions about building a new single-family home. So down here, I haven't obtained planning approval or zoning. I haven't done architectural review boards. These are all example questions, of course. The questions are whatever you type or whatever we build together. But after I answer all of my questions in real time, the software will generate a list of all the applications I would need in order to complete that project. So from there, I can start my project, and today we're going to be developing a new single family in Orleans. Is that Army Navy store still open? No, that's a shame.
There's one in Diana.
Not the same.
Damn. Seafood Sam's is still open though, right? No?
Not in Harwich.
Well, again, I was a kid, so I wasn't exactly sure what town I was in to go to these places. So what we're seeing on screen here, the software has generated a unique code, so V7VONI, and I can now copy this code. I can share this around with my my subcontractors, the property owner, legal entity, anybody that needs access to this project. Using that code, they can come online, they can start any one of these applications. So in this example, you could have up to 5 different application owners, and the applications can be completed in whatever time they're completed in, or we could structure them to be sequential. So I'm going to go ahead and start my building permit application. And the first thing that we'll see is confirming my contact information. This is all that's required to get a new account: first, last, email, phone, and address. I can make changes here if I need to, but the one thing that I can't change is my email address from this screen. And that's because we want to encourage the continued growth of contractor use. As Jack mentioned earlier, I can use this one login anywhere in the state, so I don't have to create a bunch of different user profiles. Another great thing is that on day one of your go live, if you were to move forward with us, you will, as a guarantee, have contractors that have already used the software elsewhere, which ultimately can really be helpful in the process of getting up and running with the rest of your contractor group. User profiles can have user flags added to them. So if you want to identify certain things about who's in your database, Tom's a contractor, he maybe has a violation from some other job he did. Those are examples of user-defined flags that can then be used, you can run reports against them, and you can also build them into your workflows to automate actions. On the next screen here, so 3 different types of addressing out of the box. Address or parcel, that's tied into, are you using Vision or Patriot for your assessors?
We use PK.
PK,
Yeah.
okay. And no addressing in Esri today, but PK is the primary source?
Everything comes out of the CAM on PK.
Okay. So yeah, we're agnostic in that sense. We have an integration approach where we can take data from any source and use that as your address parcel information. But then we can also drop a pin on a map or generate a street segment for any work that might take place in the right of way, like maybe what's going on out here. The address parcel is most typical for a building permit, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and search for 284 Harvard Street in Cambridge. Cambridge has been using the software for many years. Go ahead and grab that. So we can also create an association between the parcel number and the GIS. So if you want to start to flag, hey, this parcel is in a flood zone or a historic district, if it's zoned correctly or incorrectly for a project type, those are all automations that we can create around the selection of an address. And the applicant doesn't need to know that that's happening in the background. I can choose a unit from a dropdown. I can add up to 100 locations per application. But as soon as I click next, any location information about that parcel is automatically starting to build the workflow. So what we're seeing here, this is now the configurable application form. Again, the message here is that this can say anything, the options can be anything. You can associate conditions with any of these answers. So here, I'm gonna say that this is single family. That's gonna automatically trigger a description of work as a requirement. If I try to move forward, the software will highlight in red everything that I need to complete in order to move forward. When I highlight new construction, that's gonna now pop up some help text. Hey, you're gonna need to submit an energy code checklist. This would obviously be customized for whatever processes you had in place for anything that you were building. When I select contractor, that's gonna add another step to the application form and allow me to search for my license number. And today we're developing a new single family with 2-car garage and in-ground pool.
And just a key thing that Tom's highlighting here is that any required fields, if they're not filled out, you can make sure that the applicant doesn't get past that step. So you're not intaking any incorrect forms that, then you need to backtrack on, which certainly helps the headaches by putting those in.
Anytime you see a question mark, that's configurable help text that just got added to whatever data point that is to guide the applicant along further. So in this step, we, for many years, have had a tie-in to the Mass State Contractor Licensing Board. So here, if I search for my name, I can choose an entry, and that's going to automatically pull in the DBA name, license number, license type, etc. Can also run a check to make sure that they're actively licensed with the state. So if they've gone out of date, they can no longer attach themselves to the record. This could be set to be internal as well. So everything's entirely up to you how you want it deployed. Some communities have it front facing, others use it as kind of a check. When the contractor license comes in, they'll search to make sure that they're active before approving the project.
Davis, is the contractor side of the intake form, would that be something that you think the team would be leveraging, the permits you're taking in, or how you're doing it today? Just curious, like, seeing the contractor licensing portion of the software, like, is that something that you think you guys would be leveraging consistently that you're doing today, or is it?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. It's obviously a requirement in the building code for certain projects above a certain size that the state provides a matrix of which types of projects require a CSL versus just a home improvement contractor registration.
Yep.
So yeah, hopefully we'd rely on the system to draw from that licensing database from the state. So
I'll finish filling out the details here really quickly. what I'd point out here is that as I enter in these details, this field is calculated. So this is a simple calculation, A plus B equals C here. But for planning, we can have more complex calculations if you generate fees off of square footage or setbacks, anything that might require more complex calculations, those can be built in. But we'll see conditional logic throughout this as well. If I say that there's an attached garage, we get questions about the garage. This is all, I mean, really simple stuff. It's kind of, I think, table stakes for form software. But what makes this system unique is that it's really easy to set this stuff up. And I'm not just saying that. You'll see when we get to the back end that any of this can be changed at any point in time. If I wanted to assign a condition that, hey, over 10 rooms, we need additional approval or it needs to go to a different department, we can set that condition up in a matter of minutes and test it and then set it live. So this is a really good opportunity to adapt to change over time. And of course, change doesn't happen all the time in government, but it's really important to be able to make those changes when they do come up. IT, if you have to go to IT, that's one thing. If you have to work with the vendor, that's a whole different headache. I'm sure you've all experienced it at certain points. In this example, the fee is calculated off of the calculated total. So if this were to change at some point, if the contractor reached out and said, hey, the homeowners changed the scope of the project, the cost of construction is going up, that can automatically be reflected in a price increase for the permit fee. Whatever they already paid would be tracked. The new total would be automatically calculated up or down as necessary. All right, so I'm just gonna finish the acknowledgement form here. Yes answers on demolition or fire sprinkler systems in this example would trigger additional requirements, but I can digitally sign my application form here and certify that I am the owner, and next. Last but not least, we can upload any number of attachments, and these attachments are all configurable as well. So the name of the attachment, whether it's required, any help text that you might want to provide, what the town will accept versus what it won't. And anything that is required, of course, will need to be uploaded before the applicant's able to move forward. So I'm going to come in here and go to my desktop. Are you all using any plan review software today by any chance?
No.
Or any plans to? No, probably no need to, maybe. So we do offer integrations if you ever wanted to go in that direction, but most of our communities are still doing more of a manual plan review process. So I got the plans. I can download the latest version. You can print those out, mark them up, edit them, otherwise write comments on them, scan them, re-upload them. As soon as you re-upload a plan set, that's automatically going to email the applicant and let them know that there's a new version for their review. And they'll be able to filter through the versions here. All right. And once we confirm and submit, that is really the application experience in a nutshell. Any questions or comments on the applicant experience so far?
Payment?
Coming right up. So here, in today's example, the fee comes after the intake review. You might have some processes where you need to collect a fee first. That's entirely fine. The workflow status bar that you see right here, this is your process, whether we're talking about a planning activity or something in code enforcement or fire. This workflow is your process rebuilt 100%, but it's going to trigger automatically based on anything that the applicant told you in the application process, anything we know about the location, and maybe even anything we know about the user. So those are in the form of flags. So we're pulling in a lot of different sources of data to generate a really easy user experience for the applicant that they can follow along step by step. But you'll notice that my options are kind of limited here as the applicant. I'm in intake review. I can read that, hey, my application's been received, we're reviewing it. If I have a question, if I have a comment, maybe I forgot to add in $50,000 in project cost, how do I fix this? I can send that message, and whoever internally was assigned that application intake review step, they're going to be notified automatically via email that the applicant on this record has that question. You can correspond with them in real time on the administrative side of the software as well. So we'll get to a fee step in a second. You can have as many fee steps as you need to if you have milestone payments for planning activities. If you need to insert a reinspection fee. You have the ability to define what's the default, where should fees trigger by default when a new application comes in, but you also have the ability to add to this workflow or remove steps over time. And that's a pretty recent innovation, believe it or not, in the permitting world. A lot of the really big names in the market struggle with flexibility once an application's been submitted. So submit your application. If there's something wrong with it, you might need to just start over, and that's their best answer. With OpenGov, you have the ability as an internal user to make changes to any data point on behalf of the applicant. You can reopen their application and ask them to make the changes, which will be tracked via audit trail. Any changes that are made will automatically be reflected in the workflow if they have a condition assigned to them. And you also have the ability to add or remove steps as necessary based on your judgment throughout any given process. Last thing I'll show on this side, I can add up to 10 guests at a time. So by granting access, they're now able to add attachments, request inspections, and pay fees on this record, just the same as I can. But since I'm the original applicant, I can revoke their access if I need to. So that's the application process in a nutshell. We spent a lot of time to make it look this simple. That's one of the things that we see in the market is there is a lot of confusing software out there for applicants. So one thing that we wanted to do from the beginning was differentiate ourselves by having a very customer-friendly experience. But any questions before we move on to the administrative side?
Curious, just like from the feedback you might hear from residents or, frequent flyers who submit a lot of forms with the town, do you think this is something that they'd be very happy to see? That'd be a welcome change? Or just curious, what you've been hearing from the public that this might be able to help you accomplish better?
I think the permitting process currently is very confusing, and anything that could streamline it and trigger where they need to go next would be nice.
And that's a great call out. Here in the workflow, engineering department review, that's an example of some condition triggering, hey, this needs to go to engineering or needs to go to planning. Whoever in the process chain needs to be notified, they're only going to be notified at predetermined times that we have agreed upon during the deployment.
How are they notified, by email?
Yep. And you'll see, I'm going to hop over now to the internal side, and I should be on my inbox. I am. So now we're in the administrative side of the software, and there's a lot more going on here, but again, very simple layout. I'm in my inbox right now, and this is kind of your daily first thing that you'll look at when you log in. So this is going to be a replication of all the emails that are being sent by the system. You can configure individually how much or how little email communication do you want. I like to keep my inbox as uncluttered as possible. It's just for my mental health. So I turn off all my notifications. You do that up here. Settings. So you can turn off anything that you don't want to get. If you only want to be notified of, hey, this requires your attention, or hey, there's a comment that just came in on this, be notified of those critical things, but don't overwhelm yourselves. But your inbox here again, this is going to be a replication of anything that would be sent via email. Here you can filter by the status of the task. Is it active, on hold? If I wanted to look at all of my on hold approvals, everything that I set or marked for myself of, hey, I need to get more information, that's going to filter those out, and I can sort by newest or oldest. So when I highlight a task, I'm going to get a task preview on the right here. Can open my task. There's typically one big blue button on every screen. Sometimes there's two, but that's one of the user experience methodologies that we've introduced into the software is keep every screen simple with one, maybe two action items at the most, so that you never get too bogged down with decisions. Open task, that would take me to my record. I can see that this is assigned to me. I could switch who this is assigned to if I have that level of access. Search for, hey, I want to assign this fire department review to Scott. I search for Scott's name, pull him up in the database. I can click his name, that would send that approval to Scott.
George, I think you might have mentioned at the start, just like knowing where a permit stands, like who's up next, like, hey, like we lose track of things, like days happen where you're super busy. This is just a nice way, like almost as a status check that each person could do, or the department leads could do as well, just to see where things are. And then you just take care of what needs to be taken care of.
Scrolling down a little bit, here we're seeing an Esri map. This is a recent update to the software. So in 2019, late 21, we acquired the asset management solution, Cartograph. So this is now part of our suites of software. But when we acquired Cartograph, they were a gold partner of Esri. If you've ever worked with Esri, they're like the giant gorilla in the marketplace. They have a lot of power. They really get to determine who they work with and who they don't from a vendor perspective. So we were previously a silver tier Esri partner. Acquiring this software, we made gold partner status, which means now we have access to internal resources at Esri that are allowing us to start leveraging the Esri ecosystem in the permitting solution. So right now, pretty simple. We've added in the Esri base maps. Moving forward, you're going to be able to experience adding in the kind of the rich ecosystem of different Esri tools, and there are a lot of them. So that's coming over the course of the next year or so. Scrolling down here, we can see a comment in from the applicant, and we can see what's happened on this record so far. So just some simple details to kind of get oriented on different tasks that we might have open. Across the top here, some kind of standard action items. Explore, these are your different forms of reporting. So reports, this will generate reports as a list view of data. This is really open-ended reporting. You can configure any number of different reports, configure what columns you want to see versus what ones you don't, filter on any of the data points that you're capturing. Really simple reporting mechanism. But then the map will allow you to display all permit and license activity on your Esri map. And analytics is just some high-level analytics. Inspectors have a dedicated tab for their schedule as well as any requests. And then for any licensing activity, there's this renew tab. This is for any document that expires in the system. We can set up a report that tracks when does that document expire. We can then configure how does that get renewed, and the system will automatically run a renewal campaign, sending automated emails to the record owner on an ongoing basis leading up to expiration.
And I think something that's important there, it's too bad Kim just stepped out, because I know that a big initiative was passing the rental registration bylaws recently, so like to actually get that process more aligned. We have a lot of success with communities who use OpenGov for renewals to make it as accessible for the applicants actually filling it out, and in that way to hold them as accountable as you possibly can to make sure it's in accordance.
I have a question about the timeline and where something is based on, like now it's at this department or that department. So what frequently happens, and just to give like a very health-specific example, but I'm sure other departments have something similar, is there's a new restaurant in town, or they're you know, they've bought out a restaurant, so new owner, no licenses carry over, so they go through the process to get all of their own. And they need to apply for their liquor license, you know, eons ahead of anything else.
Right.
So every department gives their input. So for example, health would say like, new ownership requires new food permit license. And, you know, all that gets given to the applicant, they agree. However, that's like 6 to 8 to 10 months before they actually plan on opening. So by the time we get wind of it, I mean, we knew it was on the horizon somewhere, but there was a case last year that the applicant forgot, we forgot, and then we saw on Instagram, like, open next week. Oh my God, no, you're not.
Oh boy.
So is there a way to do like a calendar, without going into the renew tab, like a calendar reminder of events like that? Or
Yeah.
because I
Absolutely.
don't want it to show up in our task for 8 months straight, because if you look at it every day, you're
Yeah.
also gonna forget it.
Yeah, for that, let's actually hop into a workflow so we can. That's actually very funny. My wife and I went to like an open air music thing where the DJ who DJ'd our wedding was DJing. He lives in New York, so we don't get to see him that often. And it said, oh, the event's been canceled, and similar thing happened, but the city of Cambridge was able to keep the event going because of the data that they had in OpenGov. So what we're seeing here, explore reports. This is where you can set up any number of ongoing list views of data. And I'll touch on this really quickly. I want to get to your question about timeline and reminders. Records is reporting at the application level. So you can capture any detail on any application that you have in the system and filter on that. But then approvals, this reports at the workflow step level. So here the label is what step of the process that record is in, who it's assigned to over here. This allows you to create unlimited different lists of who is assigned what, how long it's been there, and so on and so forth. Really good for administrative overviews. But then you also have payment reports, obviously, with your general ledger here. Document reports, which will give you every document that's ever been issued, inspections, and any ongoing projects. So if I wanted to filter for just my building permit applications, I'd search for REC for record type. That's a filter. And then I'd search for Orleans. And with just 2 clicks, I've now filtered out to the 113 active records that I'm looking for. But from there, I can add as many columns as I want to see in that report: building type, when does the permit expire, when it's issued, what do we know about that location? Maybe we want to see where within the record this application sits. So this reporting is all interactive. If I scroll over now, those data points that I've been adding to this report are now appearing in that report. And if I hover over, I can see from a dropdown everything that we know about that location from the GIS.
And that record status bar, that's a visualization of where it sits internally in the process. So maybe like we often see like department heads like to kind of have this report set up and saved, and kind of how they like go about their day and make like so that they're maintaining what's out there, which is a cool thing to add in.
I could export this report if I wanted to, but this is all possible to be pushed over to your reporting and transparency portal, where you can set up dashboards with different filtering and kind of have everybody tracking KPIs cross-departmentally. But let's go ahead and open that record that we had submitted earlier. And this is an important view of the software because every department's applications will have this exact same format. And that's really important for interdepartmental collaboration. If everybody has to train on a slightly different module, ultimately the training time ticks way up and it creates confusion over time. So the layout we've come up with details, that's always your application form on the right. So I can scroll as a single pane of glass, whether I'm on a tablet or even on an iPhone or some other handheld device. Get all the information I need to at a glance without opening new tabs. As I mentioned earlier, if you're assign the application intake review, and you see something wrong with the application, it's obvious, hey, they submitted a commercial plan set and they selected single family, you can come in here and make that change on your own. That would automatically be tracked via audit trail in the activity feed. And again, if a change there would automatically update the workflow as well if anything had changed as a result from the process. Scrolling back up here, you might notice these locked sections. These are kind of your for office use only fields, but because they're in software, they can actually change things in the record. So example, failed inspection status, if I set that to inspection failed 3 times, or whatever the options are that we configured in there, that could automatically produce a fee with new inspections as a result. Scrolling down here, violations found. If yes, that would trigger a searchable violation database of codes. We have a lot of communities that have imported mass CMR in here so that it's just searchable. You type 105, we'll automatically pull in all the references to 105. Make a selection that will automatically pull in all the code language so you don't have to remember all of it. You can automatically push that to a document. But if you notice something that's going to require a little bit more heavy lifting from the applicant, request changes. This is new software this year. This allows you to come in here and select any part of the application that might need to be corrected. Let's say you just want more info in the description of work. Come in here, you would say, please provide more detail on the scope of work or what have you. Send that message in. That's going to reopen the application for the applicant. They can only make changes to those fields that you've approved for them to make changes to. You can do that in as many rounds as you need to arrive at a fully accurate and complete application. Coming down the left here, attachments. This is obviously everything that was uploaded by the applicant. Can grab my site plans here, download the latest version. I can download this directly to my desktop. All of the data is stored in the cloud, but it's all yours, and it's all scanned for viruses, malware, ransomware, et cetera. So this is a really safe system to do work in. You could download this to your desktop with complete confidence that it's a safe file for your network. Down here, applicant profile. Here we can see anything that we've identified about Tom over time. He's a contractor. He leaves a messy job site. Anything that you want to track about this individual, you can define those. Again, you can run reports off of these like we looked at a minute ago, and you can also automate actions in the workflow. So best example here would be violation. If you do have a violation as a result of a site inspection that should prevent an applicant from submitting new applications, you can trigger that as an automation in your workflow. Any questions here at all, Mia?
Does the messaging function allow you to message back and forth from the department to the applicant?
It does.
Is there a way to export that as a log in the event of a FOIA request?
Good question.
Would that be the activity feed on the permit?
Not in this time.
I get that question a lot, and I'm never really quite sure. I think the best thing to do would be to do a print screen of the section.
Okay, so you could, so
Yeah.
we'll retain it.
It will retain it,
Retain it
definitely, yeah.
Okay.
So here we're on that workflow step where I added a comment. I could say, I'll reopen the application for you. Thanks for reaching out. Comment that, but then I could go into my internal note and say, hey, Scott, oh, look, Tom forgot again. And that's an internal note, obviously, part of the public record. I've seen some weird stuff in the past, but yeah, this is all gonna be retained in perpetuity.
Okay.
Yeah, the best way to export would be to do a print screen of that section.
You can also see in the activity feed, where we spent some time below in like details and attachments, you can also see like changes that are made to the record.
Okay.
or any updates that happen along the way. So just in terms of like, this is also very helpful for maybe an applicant who thinks they submitted a permit earlier than they actually did. And they say, hey, it's been with you guys for a long period of time, like what's going on? You know, just gives you a central source of truth for the process, which could be valuable.
And then so location, here, if I view location, this is gonna take me to the parcel homepage. And this is where we would migrate in all historical information. So if I scroll down here, this particular address only has one record right now, but this is where we would see all historical records, all historical attachments. I'm actually gonna change my location to let's do this here. So let's say somebody selects 284 unit 1 and they actually meant 284 unit 2, change location. You have full capability to make those types of updates as well. So you can change the location at any point in time. You have a lot of flexibility. This system is very, I would call it forgiving of mistakes. Did I choose the right address that time? Let's find out. View location. Okay, I didn't, but I'll show you what this parcel would look like kind of as a built out in just a minute here. But so coming down to the workflow, this is really where the system all comes together. This is your system of record that the process is being reviewed according to your procedures. So at any point in time, and this is brand new software as well, this is what I was saying earlier about adapting to change, flexibility for an individual project. It's really important to have a strong default workflow set up so that when an applicant submits, they're gonna get 99% of the time exactly what needs to happen. But things always change. There's always gonna be something that the software can't or won't know that you will. When those situations arise, rather than having to go back and resubmit the application, we built this edit workflow capability. This allows you to add steps to the active step or remove any steps that are unnecessary. Maybe this is a subdivision. You recently did a survey of the whole subdivision and you identified that engineering is no longer required to review any plans moving forward and you don't need the environmental permit approval. Just get rid of those steps for this record, save changes. That's gonna simplify just that one workflow without affecting the default. So this gives you the ability to save time and energy by having that strong default, so you don't need to add workflow steps 100% of the time, but B, make any changes that are required based on any unforeseen or unique circumstances. So I'm gonna go ahead and, before I do, if you wanted to set a reminder for yourself out in the future, just tap here. I want to be reminded about this on October 31st. That will automatically give you a reportable data point and will notify you leading up to that due date that there's something that you wanted to remind yourself of. We can also set notifications within the workflow that are delivered on an ongoing basis leading up to that expiration. So I'm going to complete that step and complete. In real time, the software is going to update both on the internal side as well as the applicant side. And now we see the fee on the applicant side. I can come in here, pay with card, we'll pay. I'll now enter my email, my name, my address, and I think I have a credit card saved there. And we'll pay that $598.59. As soon as that transaction is verified, the applicant will be able to print out a receipt, be on your nice letterhead here. But more to the point, because I paid that fee, the software automatically updated and notified the next departments in the process. Any questions there at all?
And where does it all get applied to financially? Do you get to input account numbers or?
Yeah, so we'll do that work for you. We'll take your chart of accounts, we'll map it out to all of your fee line items. So that every night, typically at like 11:59, the software will run an export. Somebody can grab that and drop it into Munis. We can automate that in certain cases
Can
as
you
well.
print, you know, can you get a printout of what fees were applied to your account, or?
Can you get a printout of what fees? Yeah,
Like a receipt almost, you're saying?
Any kind of reporting on?
yeah, definitely. Come down here to payments, go to ledger. So the way that we structured reporting is that, yeah, you can run a report at any point in time if you want to, but we want to get you away from the action of running reports and more predefine what those reports are. So your report filters there would be like all fees today for building department or for water, for engineer, whatever the department is. That way you always have that report whenever you access it. It's gonna be those filters that we predefined. So you don't have to run anything. You just open it and there it is.
You know, monthly reporting purposes or whatever.
Yep. And that can all be exported, or again, we can push that over to your reporting and transparency portal, where we can set up any number of dashboards where this data will be live. So if I come in here to my permit and license dashboard, if we wanted to look at permit and license revenues, just tap here. Now we're seeing on a pie chart maybe 10 different departments, but I can filter if I just want to look at health permits. There's all of my revenue for the day, week, month, whatever the time filter is. And then if I scroll down, I can see the summary level information across multiple fiscal years and the transactions that make up that data set.
I'm sure this looks somewhat familiar to a few people, to maybe a few people in the room with already the transparency you guys use.
Any questions on this piece at all for anybody that maybe hasn't seen this?
I think maybe a quick time check, so we only have 10 minutes to get through.
So coming back here to the record that we had submitted earlier, we're back in permitting and licensing. So now there are 2 active steps, and the most important thing to understand about these steps is that the step name can be anything. It can trigger anywhere within the workflow. It's really just your system of record that whoever the expert is for that part of the process is notified of this and coming in and digitally applying their stamp of approval that, hey, this is good, or hey, we're gonna need some more information, with the ability to communicate back and forth with the applicant. So here I could put this on hold if I needed to, or reject it outright, but I'll also point out that right now these 2 steps, they can happen in any order, and there could be 20 steps here, there could be 200. That is not gonna happen, but complete that step. Now, fire department has completed their part of the process, but building still needs to go. That will remain open until building has signed off on that part of the process. Come in here, I'll complete the building plan review. And in real time, the software is going to issue out a permit card. Permits can look however you want or need them to. This is just one example that I like. We have obviously templates from all over the state that we could bring in and use that as a starting point. We can take what you already have and replicate that exactly. We can run process improvement on them as well. You might notice a QR code here. This would allow for a printed permit to be displayed at a job site. An inspector could come around and scan that QR code on any web-enabled device. That would automatically launch the digital copy of the record where they can perform any inspections on it. Any questions here at all?
I have a quick one. Is the code, obviously somebody just walking by that scans that is not gonna have access to the administrative side of the program?
Correct. They get a different version. They get the public facing, so it's like the search, right? One of my favorite stories related to this software, we do our company meeting in Salt Lake City now, and 2 years ago, the state of Utah signed on to do all liquor licensing in the state using this software. in January, we went to our company meeting. We were at a bar after the event, and we saw a QR code in the bar. We scanned it, and up came an OpenGov license. It was like one of the happiest moments of my life. But yeah, so that you get a public, whatever information you want to display about that record, anything you want to redact is not going to be visible. So inspections. I just scan that QR code, tap on my inspection step. That's going to give me the ability to schedule this or inspect now. Back on the applicant side, they have the ability to start a new appointment request. They can say, hey, I'm ready for just foundation and slab, or maybe all three. What dates? They can choose up to 5 dates and times that work for them with AM, PM designation. Say, hey, who's gonna be there? Is it me, a guest, or somebody else? They can add notes, maybe a lockbox code. Request appointment. That will come through as a request. The inspector is then able to schedule on the day that works best for his or her calendar.
Question, is that, can you turn that feature off?
Yeah,
Don't allow the applicants to schedule inspections online?
yeah. What inspections would you want that off for? Or maybe it's all of them.
Yeah, maybe all of them, I don't know, I mean.
Yeah.
It just, I have a little bit of experience, like, did this on Brewster.
Mhm.
And one of the problems I found was that, inspections, you couldn't create a list of inspections until they were assigned to a particular inspector, as I recall. And also, there were certain formats we couldn't generate unless those inspections had been scheduled.
Mhm.
And some of my inspectors weren't able to actually schedule their inspections. They just, their time out in the field wasn't such that they could schedule them, so it cannot be, I don't remember, can it be,
So what year was this?
it was 2 years ago.
So this is brand new. It should look a little bit different to you, but the inspection types on the right here, it used to be that it was all or nothing.
Yeah,
But now we have the ability to say, I'm ready for footings or slab or foundation or some combination. So we have made some flexibility changes there. We're continuing to add more flexibility. Where we want to get is foundation takes on average 2 hours. The inspector as a human being only has 24 hours in their day. So get to capacity restrictions. So that's where we're heading. Not there yet, but yeah, you can turn inspection scheduling off if it works better for you.
thanks.
But coming back here, let's go ahead and inspect, or we'll do schedule. I can now choose from these suggested dates what's going to work best for me. Say Thursday, assign it to myself, select my arrival time. Am I going to be there right at 2, between 12 and 1, or sometime in the day? Confirm my changes. I can now inspect that, and this is what the inspection would look like for any department, whether it's health or fire or code. It's a very simple layout where there's the workflow step, then you can have as many types as you want to on the left here. And types are nests of checklist items. You can have as many checklist items as you want to. So the idea is that it's set it and forget it. When I arrive, I simply tap pass, fail, or skip on each checklist item. If I fail the foundation step, I get a comment box as well as a camera icon. Tap my camera icon. I can now point and shoot one or as many photos as I want or need to. Upload those directly to the report. Can speak in my comments here if I have a device that supports it. Complete my inspection and complete. And in real time, the applicant would be sent an email notification with the results of that inspection.
How does it work in areas of no cell service?
I was just gonna say, you must be mistaking us for a town.
So we thought of that. So the software now comes bundled with our mobile inspection app. And right now the app is somewhat limited in functionality, but that's by design. The big problem that we had to solve is exactly that. How do we get inspections done when there is no service or no Wi-Fi? So offline mode is where we focused all of our development dollars for the inspections app today. This is going to continue to enhance over time. But yeah, this is available to you on day one. If you have low service, no service, complete all your inspections, you sync them to the device to start the day. Whenever you resume service, they'll automatically sync up to the cloud. Any questions there? So I'll leave you with this. We looked at all of the different types of workflow steps, believe it or not: approvals, payments, document issuance, and inspections. That's really all there is to this. This isn't a really complicated piece of software. It can get complicated based on how complex you want it or need it to be. But at its core, it's really just a form configuration software that allows you to define, hey, where do these workflow steps trigger and why? Do we probably always want to review the application and we always want to charge a fee, but we're only going to do the flood hazard zone review when a 100-year flood zone is true or a FEMA flood zone is true. If either of those flags are there, automatically trigger that and then assign it to the engineering department when the type of work is new construction and location flag is zone BD. So there you should see a lot of flexibility in terms of, hey, this is a simple default, just happens 100% of the time, or hey, this application type really requires a lot of nuance. Let's pre-build that. This becomes institutional system of record that you don't need to think about. You have it all built out here. And if you ever need to make a change, it's really simple. Come in here, add a new condition. We also want to do this when, I saw a silly question on there earlier, when types of dogs, thought I saw that. Types of dogs is Cavalier, King Charles Spaniel. So that's how easy it is to make changes. The conditions are all whatever you've already defined. Sometimes there are things about what you know from the GIS. But setting up conditions is really what drives this software to simplify the application process, simplify the review process so unnecessary steps of work are not being added, and if they are, remove those so that you can streamline the process as you go. And with that, we'd love to open it to questions, comments, concerns.
I have questions, but I'll save it for a smaller audience.
Cool.
I don't need to hear my question.
Yes, I have one. Just thank you for the presentation, and I know we focused on building permit application as an example, but is it fair to say that that's analogous to any other department that has permits, applications, fees, and approvals?
It's the exact same process. I use building permit primarily in most cases, unless somebody says otherwise, because a lot of departments are familiar with the process and interacting with it. But yeah, everything that we looked at on Provincetown site, exact same thing. It's a configurable form with different questions related to whatever the process is. And those different options is related to that process. Those different options have different conditions that trigger different workflow steps. So it's all the same thing. A building permit is ultimately a configurable PDF that could just as easily be a dog license or a street opening permit or a plan review letter.
So there are templates you could pull from another community or
Yep.
pull from a template or create
Yeah.
something brand new for
Even
yourself.
though it's a building permit too, I envision other departments being part of it. So
Yeah.
you trigger a certain point where water needs to look at it.
Certainly.
We'll get our email, we'll look at the plan, whatever, we sign off.
And that-
Health, same thing. We trigger, septic, sewer, what have you.
That's a really good
Exactly.
point too, that OpenGov supports well, is that we're an unlimited user model, so we don't price by seat license or have tiered subscriptions of that, so a lot of folks in this room right now, they're gonna be part of the permitting process, and to your point, there'll be a lot of approvers within the specific workflows, so you'll want transparency and alignment across, and if you want administration to all, like everyone wants to have insight into it, can.
It should streamline the whole permitting process
Yeah.
No, certainly. And you're also, someone mentioned, like, copy paste and like bring over other record types. Orleans has the luxury of being around a lot of customers who have done probably some very similar processes, in their own community. Now everyone has the nuance, but you can save a lot of time and frustration just by copying over existing record types and then configure it to, your exact process that it truly fits, but really good starting points.
I'll just show you maybe 2 other examples of workflows just so you leave with kind of no doubt that what I'm saying is true. Record types, I'm going to filter by, we looked at the water department earlier in Provincetown. If I go to any of these you want to look at?
On water? Are you on water?
Yeah.
Let's look at, say, a change of address or a new water service.
Okay, new water service. So same layout, right? Here's the form. It's just a different form. New service renewal, new service tap, the size and the price associated with it, fire service. This is conditional on tap fee, or it should be. Account type, check all that apply. And then different workflow. Form gets submitted, they review the application, the applicant pays the fee, they schedule the work order for a new service, and they go out and do an inspection. This is who it's assigned to.
And they upload ties to an as-built drawing when they're done? And
Oh, yeah. In Provincetown's case, they have just a design data sheet attachment as a default.
That's different.
Yeah,
It's got
but
both, yeah.
you add attachment here, you could add whatever you want that language to be. This system is really all about labeling, and what those labels mean to you is what gives life to the software. Go to the documents, and let's see, here's a service document, new water service application. So there, all these little squigglies, that's where the software is pulling in variables, either what the applicant put on the application or whatever your review uncovered. How do you all feel about this? Does it seem like it would work for you?
Better than paper.
I've used it, I brought it into Brewster, and it's a great program. The ease with which departments can communicate with one another is the main feature in my mind in terms of interdepartmental approvals and review. And also just sort of broad historical, like if I get a building permit application as of now, I don't know of conservation, what they did for this particular property in the past. But presumably those records will all be there going
Yeah.
forward.
So, yes, you didn't migrate data in Brewster?
I'm sorry?
You didn't migrate data in Brewster?
We did, and as I recall, I had to go into spreadsheets.
Yep.
And then we migrated from there, and it was perilous, as I recall. Got down to the last round before it was largely successful.
Yeah, I mean, there, unfortunately, no 2 data migrations are alike, and that's just the reality. It's any software that you work with. I would say that we get better at it every year, as we see more and more. We're actually now, one thing I didn't mention is that we're now really interested in how do we leverage AI in our deployments and in our software. So we've actually started introducing what we call robotic process automation into deployments as well as data migration, ways to cut down on the manual errors that are made by a human, like doing a lot of rote, repetitive tasks. So yeah, we get better at data migrations every year. There are still hiccups here and there, but
I see other improvements you've made since I left Brewster, so.
yeah, the layout should look almost completely different. And that, I guess that's a really good place to end is this software updates in real time over the air, so there are no versions. You're always on the latest. You might have seen that pop up in the bottom right-hand corner when I went into province's town's environment. When we release new functionality, we give you a help text. We advertise it for a few weeks or a month, giving you, hey, this is how to use that new functionality. But there's a lot of safety built into the fact that every community is using the same version of the software at any point in time, because that means if one community's down, everybody's down. So we have a big problem. We have to fix it right away.
I have a question about, well, you put in town contractor, but an applicant who, so they have an account and they work in multiple towns, and we see this a lot. Business owners have multiple locations, restaurateurs have food trucks that go to all the different towns.
Mm-hmm.
So the little flags that you showed earlier about like leaves a messy work site or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
are those, would that be our town only? Are we allowed to communicate with other towns, like what's up with Tom, like why is he so messy? Like,
Yeah,
how does
you're.
that work? Or like, can we see a list of where they've like had licenses in other towns, so we could call up that town?
Unfortunately not. So your database is your database. Tom might have a really bad reputation in Orleans, but might have a squeaky clean reputation in Brewster. So yeah, that there is a partition between each environment.
Couldn't Brewster call and say, you know,
Oh, yeah.
how's Tom been? And you pull up.
Yeah,
Tom
and-
say, well, this, and
I
this.
think sharing it directly would be no problem. Public records file.
Yeah.
At least if you could see like which towns they have licenses in, you would know who to call. Like, I'm not gonna start cold calling all the towns.
Right.
Because Tom pulled a licenses here, but like a frequent flyer, yeah, you could totally do that.
But Tom could also call or, request open records and say like, hey, I want to see what you guys know
Show
about
me all
me.
my comments. What's NSF stand for?
Comments should
I-
be very political.
What Dad's got earlier.
I added that in there because that was somebody's code for like passing a bad check. These just come up over the years and sometimes catch me off guard.
Non-sufficient funds. is what I'm saying.
Non-sufficient funds, thank
There
you.
go.
Have you been able to do anything about, people like Tom with
That's not
multiple
good.
email addresses having multiple accounts?
Not sufficient, it's not good.
Not yet. That's a tricky issue to solve. Did you run into that a lot? Or?
We did in Brewster, yeah.
Yeah. Did you figure out any ways around it, or how did you combat
No,
it?
it was just, going through, the list of permits,
Mhm.
one by one, just to make sure that we were on the right one, and, we didn't have the ability to delete them, so.
Yeah. So what I would say there is, a lot of times these are the things that our implementation analysts are learning over as each new deployment gets done. They get new tools in their tool chest. So there may be some new best practice guidance on that I'm not aware of. I would definitely, if you do end up moving forward with us, keep that in mind, bring it up. They might have a better approach today. From a programmatic feature functionality perspective, we haven't made any changes there.
I have a question. What are you doing for, on the document management side, what are you doing for like legacy plans and stuff like that?
Do you have a document management system today?
Laser?
Laserfiche. We have an integration with Laserfiche.
So, for a property record, you can pull up old plans and licenses.
Yep.
If Laserfiche is scanning it in.
So the way that works is when it's a EDMS integration, electronic document management integration. Whoever you use, there's going to be a link out to their Laserfiche location in the notes section here. So if you want to do a review, you just open it from that parcel page and see everything you have on hand
So you're gonna hop outside of your software into.
into Laserfiche. Yeah.
So that's part of the initial offering in terms of the software that you bring to us?
Yep. It's there's a small professional services fee associated with that, but we do offer that.
That's new to me. Even though it was discussed before implementation, we were told ultimately, like,
No, I mean, so I'm not sure when, do you know what year Brewster signed their contract?
It's signed in like late 2019, 2020, and then
Okay.
COVID hit. And when I showed up, the clock was almost run out on implementation, so it was
Yeah.
a big rush. But that was, end of 2021.
So 2019 was the year that OpenGov acquired Viewpoint. So I was a part of that acquisition. And the day that we were acquired, I think we had 25 employees at the company. We now have 40 engineers on this software. So
Gotta change your email. Viewpoint email.
the only thing our CEO's ever gotten mad at me about was that I kept that email in my presentation environment. He got very flustered on a demo one time. I like to keep the memory alive a little bit.
So have you done away with the name Viewpoint?
We tried to. It's never going to go away in
Okay, 'cause
Massachusetts.
some of like the landing page, when we had it, still said Viewpoint.
Yeah,
I
we-
asked about it.
You might have known. It's really hard to see, but we have successfully updated the URLs now. But I'll go like present at a Massachusetts user group, and a lot of my colleagues were not or have never been a part of the Viewpoint era, and we'll start and do a whole OpenGov presentation, and we'll be like, any questions? The first question will be like, yeah, so in Viewpoint, I want to, and it's, yeah, the names never go away. But
Well, I thought you guys were extinct, so that's good.
just change shape a little bit.
I know we're a little over the time you guys gave us today, but like really appreciate the time, the questions. I think I'll get a follow up to the team with what we covered and some areas of priority that we've learned today. We'll probably want to do some sort of scoping session for the project with a few folks, and then happy to stay around here, answer any questions. I know we want to talk a little bit about the Munis integration. But if you have extra questions, please hang around, but also don't want to keep anyone who has to get to anything as well. You guys will almost give us 2 hours of your time, so.
We
really-
talked a lot about permitting and stuff, but not so much asset management.
Yeah, so today was, we were told, just like really speak to the permitting solution and what the current permitting process looks like. If we want to talk about the asset management, our colleague Bill Becker, he leads all the asset management partnerships within our New England group. So he'd be more than happy to, connect you guys, and he'll speak to actually what Cartograph or OpenGov asset management looks like, inventory management, strategic planning.
I'm
It's-
currently all set, but
Oh, okay.
But this integrates.
hydrants, water mains, sewer, everything.
The
Can you
major,
integrate fleet management into that?
yeah,
Yep.
the major
Utility
advantage,
fund too.
Is that a big area of
Need?
need right now?
Yes.
yeah, so the major advantage, why would the town want to go through the process of switching that software? We're now integrated from a workflow perspective in permitting and licensing over to asset management. So you can send tasks and activity requests into this system for things like curb cuts or street opening permits, tree permits, et cetera. But just to give you a 10,000-foot overview, in this system, it's all of your assets in Esri bidirectionally integrated. So any updates made here will push to Esri and vice versa. Right now, I've got a layer on 4 layers on for parks, benches, park structures, and amenities. If I wanted to look at this park, just view that location, I can now see all of the amenities associated with this park as a tree. So here, we're looking at a container component relationship. So the park is the container, the components are the trees, athletic spaces, water fountains, however granular you want to get. Anything that you create in this system will, again, automatically be pushed over to Esri. And if we want to look at an individual item within that park, maybe this bench here, the software has internal calculations that automatically over time will reduce the estimated condition of that asset based on what it is. So this will give you programmatic reminders to go out and do preventative maintenance work.
So, I have a question.
Sure.
When you push data, you're pushing a client that might, say, have their catch basins online. And if you're cleaning catch basins and you have this on the phone truck,
Mhm.
you're pushing to someone that's hosting maps from Arc server, like at a municipal level? What do you, or you're pushing a town staff person that cares that someone visited the basin and cleaned it today?
If I understand your question correctly,
You're
so
pushing an updated record of
Yeah.
the basin data, so.
So this particular piece of software is all internal, unless you open it up to external contractors, but there's no public portal.
That's what I was curious.
Yeah.
Who you're showing them to, but, thank you.
But if you wanted to display any of the data, that's obviously possible in Esri.
Sure.
So who handles, well, in terms of data entry, inventory?
Mhm.
Do you guys have guidelines, templates, live assistance for that sort of, assuming it's not already available, and needs to be entered?
Mhm.
Is there an expectation as to how long that's gonna take before we can, till it's complete?
Can usually be uploaded with an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, so Excel spreadsheet is possible. We have those templates. If you're talking about like going out there and manually identifying things,
Well, let's say there's something that is really key to the town that, in terms of asset management, that needs to be added, that just hasn't been inventoried yet.
Mhm.
Is there an expectation on the town to get that list complete in an hour, or in a year,
Oh.
rather?
No.
Before you guys were, you're on your own.
So there is, when we scope out a project, we do want to move towards project closure, so we're not just kind of in limbo forever. We don't rush you by any means, but when the project is closed, then that's when everybody on your side has said, yeah, we're okay to move on without your assistance from here on out. But we take a crawl, walk, run approach with all of our software. There are no hard deadlines in terms of like, hey, you need to have all of this up and running. Even with the permitting side, if you wanted to start with building, planning, health, and kind of ease into the rest of it, you can do that. It's
Is
entirely
there
up to you.
a way to export into Excel any particular asset, add to it, and then upload it so the new ones are added?
Yeah.
Once it's turned over, that we can do it ourselves?
Yeah, 100%. And what I was just going to show you here, this is really cool, but I'm on the mobile app right now. When I create asset, I can either choose, let's say we're going to go try and identify all of our ADA ramps. Could do it that way, or I can take a picture of whatever that asset is. Right now we have 12 assets that are automatically identified by machine learning. We're moving to 40 by the end of the year. You take a picture of that, can automatically even read signs if there's text on them, identify what that object is, what type of asset it is. Obviously there are different codes for different signs. The software can do a lot of that heavy lifting for you. And if I were to take a picture right here, it would geolocate, hey, this is podium A2 or whatever.
Can you download you said you can download Excel, can you download as a shapefile for upload to Esri?
Mm-hmm.
The data stored on cloud servers or hard servers?
Cloud servers.
So how often do you back up?
It's backed up instantaneously all day, every day, yeah.
Through Amazon, it's through AWS.
Yeah.
One last question, I'm sorry for taking so much time.
No.
My experience was with the renewal campaign for annual inspections, 110s, that we were told we were gonna have to enter that data in, one at a time, basically go through the inspection process for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And after that point, the renewal campaign could be automated. Is that still just generally the approach?
Yes and no. So nothing has changed about the renewals itself, what we would see here today. This screen should look familiar to you. But I would entertain having that conversation with you about what the process is, without knowing it intimately. Because we just released this communication center as a beta. So told the Utah story earlier. Where's my slideshow? There we go. State of Utah needed a way to keep in touch with license holders all across the state. They were all paper before, and their license holders were really not happy. We built this tool in tandem with them, which takes renewals to a more granular, more configurable level. So previously, renewals, if you remember, the only variable you could manipulate was the days before expiration and the days after. This allows you to choose the type of record. It allows you to set up workflows with communication touch points. And it allows you to pull from different variables associated with the type of thing that you're going to be renewing or communicating around. So inspections, approvals, documents, and payments are all part of this, with different kind of activities based on what the variable is. So it's possible that this could improve on that process, but would want to learn more about it first. And this will be available by the time you guys go live if you do move forward with us.
You have anyone that still works in, people forms currently, and does a specific task? And I know I've looked at Tim's thing in Provincetown, I'm not sure he does the same, but do you have anyone that's still using people forms locally, even though they're on OpenGov with, other departments? Like, no?
I'm not sure.
Everyone bails from one and joins the other?
Generally, yeah, what would, like, in that situation, like, what do you think would be the advantage of doing people
Like,
form?
we could still produce a state, we worked with the developer on the nuance that is generating an order of conditions. And I haven't looked on Provincetown, but last time Tim showed it off to us, you were not doing that for them.
What is an ordinance of conditions? Order of
Yeah,
conditions.
just a state permit, wetlands permit.
Oh,
And the only good thing, there's a few good things about people forms, but it still generates that, like with very little human typing.
mhm.
Looking at CAMA, looking at,
If you want to send me a copy of that, I would be happy to look at rebuilding it. But if I come in here to my gold data,
but that, as you go into towns, when you negotiate with Mark or whoever you do this with, that's the specifics of the RFP, how much nuance help we need in each department,
mhm.
I assume. I always thought this heavy lift that we did with that company was gonna be, sold to every Massachusetts community, because it was great, but then it wasn't.
Here we go. Lexington.
Yeah, so I could look at Lexington, see what you
Yeah.
get for that.
I think the key there is, there's so many different
I'm sure you're
configured
doing it
forms
for
we've
some.
done. Yeah. But that's a unique one. We could definitely, like, that's something like specifically, like, that's the value and like the beauty of doing the implementation with our team, like, in-house and working with OpenGov directly is, like, whatever you need essential to your process, we can build that out as
Yeah.
well.
Well, it's like Davis said earlier in discussions, there's two legacy imports. There's just legacy data that's old
Mhm.
and closed, but then there's stuff that's,
In people.js.
yeah,
Got it.
that might be good for another 2 years.
Okay, certainly.
Do you have to pay maintenance with them, or?
Oh, yeah,
The reason I ask is sometimes we'll run into the situation where the municipality just owns whatever software it is in perpetuity, and there it just makes sense to continue doing some stuff, but.
Great. Well, we can stick around and answer any other Q&A. I do know it's one, so want to make sure everyone has, if some people have a meeting come up or anything like that. But thank you guys again for the time, and I have a few cards if anyone needs my contact info. Provide that and look forward to it.
Thanks.
Be in touch, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.